It's been a while since the Reds and Cubs have played, and here comes the first series of 2024. These two teams, not that far apart, though. What's up? This is Jeff Carr from the Locked On Reds podcast. Alongside me is Matt Cozy from Locked On Cubs. We are going to get you set for this weekend series between the Reds and the Cubbies. As these two teams, man, we talked about it preseason. These were going to be the two teams at the top, and I mean, they're not really. The Cubs are much closer to the top than the Reds are, but the weirdness going on. We're going to get a look at like where the two teams are coming into this series. We're going to take a look and tell you what to watch out for coming up here in a few minutes, and later on, a little bit about Nick Martini and maybe a surprise player or two that you could see this weekend. Thanks for joining us on this crossover between Locked On Cubs and Locked On Reds. We are both part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day, and we bring you all of the most passionate, sometimes the most exhausted, exhausted, both of those things, coverage of our favorite teams throughout this marathon of a season. And before we begin today's series preview, it's brought to you by FanDuel. Today's episode, brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's a $150 bonus bet with any $5 bet that wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And where we will get started here, Matt, is the Reds just get done with the Cardinals. The Cubs just get done with the Brewers. Both teams looking toward this weekend to maybe get right a little bit. I mean, quite frankly, the Reds have been everybody's get right if you're looking at pitching staff. I mean, just go talk to Andre Palante, who had a ERA that you needed to count on two hands with before he pitched on Wednesday against the Reds, and he didn't allow a run. So this is where we are at. What's the series looking like for you guys?
Yeah, Jeff, it's going to be fun to do this crossover. It's been a frustrating season on the north side and for the Cubs. Yeah, I think this weekend you'd like to turn a page, but there's just a lot of question marks right now, a lot of hesitation. And I think really the word to sum up the Cubs year right now, and I know that you and Steve and your listeners connect with this, is frustration. The Cubs were 17-9 at one point. Entering Friday's game, they are 28-29. The drop-off has not been small. The bullpen shakiness to really begin the year. You figured Adbert Alzolay was someone they could lean on. He blows every other game. They've had defensive mishaps. That was one of their hallmarks last year, was being buttoned up defensively, and they haven't been this year. Kyle Hendricks completely falling off. But as we've learned over the last month or so, it's been over a month now, it really is the offense for the Cubs. And they don't have one person who can really carry them. And, we can get into that as we keep going. But we were so excited. Craig Counsell coming from the Brewers, a couple off-season additions, perhaps not enough, but yeah, 17-9 to 28-29. It's a little bit discouraging right now in Cubs land.
Yeah, I think that every NL Central team, except for the Brewers, has had a big slide. I think that that's coming for the Brewers. And I think between our two teams, because the Reds are very similar in that their lineup is the biggest issue right now. They're not similar in that they're 4 games back of the Cubs, currently looking at the same sort of spot that they were in just a few days ago when all the vibes were great and they swept the Dodgers and they beat the Cardinals in the first game of the series, and we're thinking, hey, they're right in the ship right now. Then they end up losing that series to the Cardinals. And I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I honestly think with the way that this division is moving and will continue to move throughout the season, I think that all of us are going to be mad at our teams, and then we're going to look up on September 1st and be like, we're how many games close to first? Oh, all right, go get it.
Yeah, and if not September 1, then definitely throughout the summer. That's
Yeah.
my biggest memory from last summer, is that everybody was pretty much in it. Certainly the Brewers, Cubs, and Reds, and the Pirates and
And the
Cardinals
Pirates had April.
eventually.
We'll always give them April.
Yeah,
You
20-8, I think they were last
yeah.
April of 23. But yeah, there was a drop off with those two clubs, but then you had a firm top three for most of the summer. And then, yeah, you're right, into September. I don't, this division doesn't strike me as one that the Brewers are going to run away with, but I'll tell you what, they've been impressive. I think they've been one of the top stories in baseball this year. Not to say that it's out of nowhere, but they had real losses. Counsell,
Right.
Burns, Williams, Yelich. Yelich is now back, but they have not missed a beat. And there's something to be said about that. They took this series really seriously this week against the Cubs, as they should have, the Counsell reunion tour. And, amid the pomp and circumstance of that, the Brewers just played better baseball. And, but with that being said, I do think we're going to have a healthy race most of the year.
I agree with that. And I think that the biggest thing, and I don't know if it shows up in this series or not, but the biggest thing with the Reds is that they just haven't been completely healthy. TJ Friedl just came back from his second broken bone in his hand area. He had a broken wrist, and then he had a broken thumb. But I think he has an adamantium skeleton, because every time we said that he was going to recover in X amount of days, it was like half that amount of time. It was crazy. He was so healed so fast. So we'll see if he can kind of get off the ground in this Cubs series. But kind of like you mentioned with the Cubs, the Reds really haven't had that guy. Like, there was a point in the season where Spencer Steer was the guy. It's been a while since that's happened. There was a point where Elly was the guy, and quite frankly, he is still the guy on base and the guy running the bases, but his power has sort of disappeared here recently. I haven't seen a whole lot of, homers or extra base hits of any kind. So that's kind of gone away. It feels like every so often there will be a guy who pops up in a game, but he doesn't stick around for very long. Like there was a great game from Jeimer Candelario last week. There was a great game from Jonathan India last week. And these are names that you know, but these aren't guys that are consistently providing any sort of pressure for opposing pitchers. I mean, Jeimer Candelario got his batting average up above 220 the other day, and on a season basis, that looks pretty horrible. But for the month of April, I think he was batting 150. So he's jumped it up like 70 points. It's crazy how good he has turned things around here in the month of May. Hopefully that continues, but that's going to be the thing looking at this series moving forward, because obviously our two clubs are going to be in this race. I firmly believe that the Reds are not done. I know that there are plenty of people that are trying to tell me that they are, but I think they're hanging on by a thread. That's just a little tiny thread that they're still hanging on with. And quite frankly, if all they got to do is go out and get like a right-handed outfielder, which I know that the Braves just entered that market, but if they go out and they get a right-handed outfielder, we might be able to talk about a completely different lineup. And that's going to be the biggest thing to me, as well as how does things move? What kind of streaks do people go on and stuff like that? Who buys at the deadline?
Right.
Who buys the most at the deadline? Because I really think, especially with the Cubs and the Reds, maybe even the Cardinals, the Brewers kind of, I mean, when you trade Corbin Burns in an offseason, I find it hard to believe you're going to buy at the deadline, but they could surprise us there too, because they've surprised us so far.
Yeah, no, I think the Cubs and Reds are good candidates to buy offense at the deadline. And there's going to be good players out there positionally. I think actually the pitching market, especially starting pitching, is going to be pretty bare. From what I could tell so far. But right now, both of these teams, you talk about the ebb and flow of the season, Jeff. Shoot, the Reds, again, you mentioned last weekend series with the Dodgers. The Cubs have had those moments. I thought a turning point for them was a few Friday nights ago. They grinded ABs against Jared Jones at PNC. That didn't end up being a turning point. And the Cubs don't have the elbow room to make up for this poor performance. It's the main six guys: Bellinger, Horner, Suzuki, Happ, Morel, and Swanson. If those guys don't hit, then they're not going to win a lot of games. It could really be that simple. And for the most part, 5 of those 6 or 4 of those 6, if you exclude Bellinger and Horner, who've been okay, have struggled. Morel's been up and down. Hap's been not good. Suzuki's been not good. And Swanson has been not good. And Swanson is the most expensive player on this team in terms of total value, Jeff. And he hit 8th today.
Oof.
The last couple of games, he's hit 8th.
That's not good.
No.
And quite frankly, kind of hope the Ian Happ stuff continues, because every time Ian Happ plays the Reds, it's like he hits 1,000. It's crazy how much
against the Reds and Pirates. He's like Barry Bonds.
So that's an interesting segue, because coming up next, we're going to tell you exactly what to watch out for in this series. And Reds fans, don't fret. Shota Imanaga, he's not pitching this series.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. We have some breaking news for you as FanDuel has updated their NL Central odds. And right now, the Brewers are minus 155 to take the NL Central. The rest as follows: Cubs plus 320, Cardinals plus 470, Reds plus 1,400, and Pirates plus 2,400. I think there's some value buys right there. And the Brewers, again, surging to minus 155. But we'll see how this all shakes out. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count, or every pitch and swing count as well. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Make sure you check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 feed. It is a 24/7 feed, like I mentioned, of all of the biggest stories in sports, covered by the local hosts of Locked On, like Matt and myself, and the national hosts who cover every league, like our pal Sully. Check out Locked On Sports Today 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Matt, let's look at what to watch for in this series. Now, I will lead this off by saying you're getting the Reds' best shot on the mound. You're getting Hunter Greene, you're getting Lodolo, and you're getting Graham Ashcraft in this series. Hunter Greene, and I have been told about all Reds players, not just Hunter Greene, that if I were to be negative about everybody, we'd be undefeated. We'd won the World Series probably 2 or 3 times by now. And if I wouldn't talk good about guys, they probably would do good every time out. But I'm going to talk good about these guys because Hunter Greene has been absolutely phenomenal this season. This has been the step forward that we've been looking for. And it's not necessarily that he is just going crazy with a third pitch. That's been the constant theme that we talk about with Hunter Greene, of what does he need to do to take the next step. The thing that he has done the most is he has commanded his fastball. And he said it early on in this year, where after a game where he pitched really well, they asked him what's going on. And he's just like, I just figured out, like, if I take a few miles an hour off my fastball, I can dot it. That's what we say to anybody that throws 100 miles an hour. Like, just take it off. Just take a few miles off, and you know where it's going. And he is dotting it. He is setting up his slider with it. And he is really starting to incorporate a splitter. His last outing, he threw 12 splitters, which, quite frankly, last year, the third pitch that he was trying to throw was a changeup. And I think 12 was the most that he threw of a changeup in any outing, and he just never got the confidence with that. So maybe he's growing in confidence with a third pitch. That is what I'm looking forward to the most in the series, just to see how Hunter Greene pitches in Wrigley. And, you know, is the wind going to be blowing out on him? Is it going to be blowing in on him? Like, how's this going to affect his game? Because he does give up a few fly balls, so that could be a big thing there. And Nick Lodolo, him coming back has just been such a huge boon for this pitching staff. Something we hoped would happen, but it has happened. He has pitched really, really well. And really, coming into the season, the biggest question mark surrounding the Reds was the starting pitching staff. And dare I say, I think it's their strength right now. So I don't know if that will continue. I don't know if that will be, the way all season. But as of right now, that is what is keeping them in any game currently.
Yeah, well, Jeff, the Greene and Lodolo games this weekend, and really among all starters in the NL Central, those are two of the few names that I look for. If you're coming up on the schedule for the Cubs, I'm going to FanGraphs roster resource page. Hey, who's supposed to pitch? And Greene and Lodolo, I mean, for my coaching mindset, right? Not afraid of anybody, but they have my respect. I think Saturday's game, Jeff, of the three, is the one I have the least confidence in. Part of that is because of the Cubs offense, yes, but also because of Hunter Greene. Shoot, Justin Steele, the Cubs' number one pitcher, is opposing Hunter Greene. And I have the least confidence in that game. I'm going to be at Saturday's game, Jeff. Saturday's game is on Fox. I love that. I love that these two teams who battled really well last summer together, and into September, is on Fox. I appreciate that. The Cubs right now on FanDuel are minus 154 on Friday. Javier Assad has been a magician out there. He gets by with low velo, a lot of movement, a lot of junk. He had back-to-back starts against the Braves. He did well in one, did poorly in the other. And then he was on Sunday Night Baseball in his last outing and upped the swing and miss, but scuffled at times. And then you got Ben Brown against Nick Lodolo. Ben Brown's coming off 7 no-hit innings the other night. So 3 really good pitching matchups. And the more we talk, even just in this episode, the more I'm realizing how comparable these clubs are. The Cubs starting pitching has been not only the strength like the Reds, but it's been a clear one. And the starting pitchers can't do it alone. But that's where we're at.
That was something, and quite frankly, I was very glad that the Reds are not getting Imanaga, although I would like to watch him play this season, but that's what MLB.TV's for, when he plays people that aren't named the Reds. But the matchup with Justin Steele, and you mentioned, so there's 2 things here, and not to talk bad about my own team, but on Saturday, Justin Steele throws with his left hand, correct?
Yes.
That is part of the mantra to beat this lineup, almost without trying, is that you throw with your left hand. On Friday, Javier Assad, low velo, high movement, that is also part of the formula to beat this club, because there's something about, and especially if he can dot it on the inside corner, because Elly De La Cruz, and that's the thing that has been absolutely killing him all season long when he goes through these stretches. And his last game was a multi-hit game. I'm not saying that he is in a slump right now, but the way you shut him down is you dot the fastball on the inside part of the plate, because there's been not a lot of called third strikes, but I can picture a bunch of different called third strikes where it hits the inside very cleanly. It's not a show type call, but he's like jumping out of the way. He's like, oh, hey. And then it's like, no, dude, that was over the plate. Like,
that's a strike.
I don't know why you're jumping out of the way of that one. So that's going to be the interesting thing in this one. Like, how does he adjust? Because I know that Andre Palante for the Cardinals on Wednesday, who came into that game just not impressing anybody. I'm pretty sure the Cardinals were just like, whatever, we're going to throw him out there, and if he gets his brains beat in, then we'll just throw somebody out from the bullpen early and have a bullpen game. But he threw 6 innings of shutout ball, and the Reds never really challenged him at all. And part of the reason for that was they just didn't adapt. There's not a lot of in-game adaptation for this lineup. It feels like they start a game with a game plan. And if that game plan works, it's going to be a good game for the lineup. But if it doesn't work, well, then we're going to see if it can work at some point in the game, even if it's not working at all during the game. And it just makes no sense. There's different things about the way that the Reds have sort of operated this season that you kind of scratch your head about a little bit. And the lineup operation and just their strategy with that has been one of them. But you're right. I mean, this series last season was must-see TV, and I'm glad that Fox is recognizing that because I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good for the game, and especially to pump up this division a little bit. I have one major concern this weekend, and that is the running game. The
Mm,
Cubs cannot hold base runners right now, while simultaneously their catchers have been porous.
mm,
It's one of the bigger surprises of the year. The pitchers, especially a guy like Assad, Jeff, less with Steele and Brown, but definitely Assad Friday, that's slow to the plate out of the stretch. And then Amaya and Gomes behind the dish have had real struggles. Opponents against the Cubs this year, 46 for 54 in stolen bases. I am afraid of this. I will admit it. I think the Reds running game is going to be a factor this series. It seemed like the Brewers on Memorial Day, the first game of this four-gamer this week, were just giving things a test drive, and then they started to run the rest of the week. And it really became amateur hour at times
mm.
with this club. Miguel Amaya, especially in Thursday's loss to the Brewers, really hurt the team. He's had some receiving problems as well. And so anything that's dirted, anything that he's got to shift to his left or right, I think the Reds runners got to see that and go. And just straight stealing, I think, is going to be part of their game as well this weekend. It's really easy to put guys in motion against the Cubs right now. Again, the starting pitching has been great, but I think their inability to hold runners paired with the catching struggles has been a reason for this slide.
The interesting thing will be, do the Cubs limit the walks? Because the Reds
Mm.
do well when they draw walks. They've got to draw walks, though, because they're just not hitting with any sort of consistency. That's going to be the big thing. If they can get guys on, I'd be interested to see what the
Yeah.
running game does. But actually, and here recently, too, there was a play real quick before we get out of this segment, but there was a
Yeah,
play that
please.
Elly De La Cruz had where he hit a line drive to left field, and the left fielder for the Cardinals, who I'm blanking on, kind of fumbled it a little bit, and I'm like, oh, that's an easy Elly double. Like Ellie's always looking for two, and then the camera showed him, and he was slowing up, and he came into first base, and I'm like, I wonder if they're having him be more conservative, because as fun as Ellie is at taking that extra base, and his mindset is always of electricity, and the most electric thing he can do is take another base. There's been some times where that's burned him, and I wonder if they're trying to draw that back a little bit. We'll see if that continues this weekend, but that was something that I noted that I'm like, I don't think it's nothing, but I'm not really sure how much of a something that it currently is. We'll,
So
we'll
you
see.
think that somebody actually stepped in, like had a conversation with them?
I think so, and
Wow.
I find it interesting because this comes days after the fact that Dave Roberts had some comments after the game of just like, geez, Elly De La Cruz could be one of the best players in this league. He just really needs somebody to coach him with base running. And
Oh,
there were a
okay.
lot of Reds beat writers that were like, yeah, they've got a guy, like there's a guy that does that and all
Yeah.
that, and it's just like, wonder if he thinks that's inadequate. We'll see. We'll
Hmm.
see. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch for. But I'll tell you this: there's going to be a few surprises in this series, and I don't know that Reds fans will be surprised about Ian Happ, but there's one guy who might surprise Cubs fans, but he's not going to surprise Matt. We'll talk about that coming up next. If you're like me and your team is your wardrobe, then you need Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix is going to help you look good because, quite frankly, I need all the help I can get. Stitch Fix has this great setup where you send them your preferences, your style preferences, your budget preferences, all this other stuff, and how much you're really looking to go formal, office wear, or you just want to look good for a date. Stitch Fix can help you out with all of that. They send you a box that is curated by your stylist. There's like 5 things in this box, and you can choose from them. Whatever you like, you can keep. And whatever you don't like, you send back to Stitch Fix because Stitch Fix has got you covered. You got to check out Stitch Fix today. Go to stitchfix.com/MLB and see all of the different options they have for you. I have worn different Stitch Fix shirts on the podcast before. Not currently wearing it. Obviously, it says StreamYard. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that. But there are so many great, comfortable options that also look nice, too, because the number one thing with anything that I wear, is it wife approved? Everything I get from Stitch Fix is wife approved. So check out stitchfix.com/MLB, and you'll also get $20 off your first fix when you go to stitchfix.com/MLB. Again, stitchfix.com/MLB, must redeem within 7 days of sign up. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast and the Cubs' hometown broadcast with Sirius XM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds or Cubs. And thanks for checking out this Locked On Reds, Locked On Cubs crossover as we get you set for a big-time weekend series. You know, with all of this, there's plenty of names. You got Cody Bellinger, you got Nico Horner, you got, even for Reds fans looking at the Cubs, you got Ian Happ. You got those guys, we know. For the Cubs fans, you know you got Elly. You know that Jonathan India will not go away. He's going to do something in this series. Tyler Stevenson has been pretty good over the years. Who are some of the unsung guys? Because I know, you know, one of the Reds guys, because there have been a few games where he has played pretty well, including the series finale against the Cardinals, where Nick Martini had a multi-hit game.
Yeah, Jeff. Nick Martini is someone who I have followed for a long time, really ever since he became my ex-teammate after playing in high school with him. Just so many good memories with Nick. And when I was a junior, he was a senior. We won the state championship here in Illinois, 2008. And Nick it's just been a joy to follow his career. He has been good everywhere he's been. He, was a sophomore on varsity, was all-state, hit .520. Sophomore at Kansas State, he was Big 12 Player of the Year. And, he really grinded through the minor leagues. He went through his years of control with the Cardinals, made it to the show with the A's, started and led off the wild card game in 2018, had some short stints with the Padres and the Cubs before going to the KBO, and then back to the States with the Reds. And, I was really happy and definitely had some pride when he made the club out of spring training. 2 home runs on opening day was incredible. Since being recalled last week, he's hit a home run, he's doubled. Would like to see him accept his walks more. He's someone that was his calling card for so long, was an on-base machine. And then around that 2022 time, when he went to the KBO, his profile really changed and he went from more of on base to power. And since then, and not a surprise, we've seen him swing and miss more. But yeah, I'll definitely keep an eye on him, this weekend, and we'll see what my agenda is Saturday. But depending on where I'm at in the park, I'm planning on at least trying to get his attention if I can. But I have one great Nick story that I wanted to share. The reason why I wore this Dingers jersey today was because this is someone that I get it. It's easy to criticize the players, and he's been hot and cold this year, and maybe more cold than not. But he loves baseball. He's going to be in baseball for the rest of his life. He's going to be a great coach. 7 days, 1 whole week after the wild card game in 2018 with the A's, he played in our slow pitch softball game that October. He just loves to play. His brother was on our team every week, and when Nick would come back from pro ball, he would play with us. But we figured 2018, he just spent the summer in the bigs. We're not going to see him this fall. 1 week on the dot, he's in our lineup after being in the A's lineup at Yankee Stadium in the playoffs.
That's awesome.
He just lives and breathes the game. I know a lot of these guys do, but I wanted to share that.
Go from Yankee Stadium in the wild card
to
game
Lippold Park in Crystal Lake.
The ballpark in Crystal Lake. You gotta love that. No, and I love. I mean, I'm trying to think of a different word, like a more baseball word for this, because like it's the word that they use in football and in baseball. You know, a guy's a gym rat. Dude just loves the game, just eats the game, that sort of thing. That's who he is. And yes, there are plenty of statistics to point to right now that say, boy, he's a struggle at the plate. But I'll give you this. He is tied for third on the team in RBIs. He has 20 RBI. Him and Jamer Candelario have the same number of RBI. It's Spencer Steer, then Elly De La Cruz, and then Martini and Jamer Candelario are tied for that. And look, he's probably going to crop up. It'll be interesting. He should be coming off the bench on Saturday with Justin Steele on the mound.
Right.
And then you've got TJ Friedl is back, and you're able to kind of finagle the lineup a little bit better because he can hit lefties a lot better than some of the other left-handed hitters on the roster can. But he'll probably be in there afterwards, so you might be able to say hey to him from the dugout or something like that.
Yeah.
But no, he's a guy. It's easy to root for guys like that, and I mean he has been called upon a lot more than I think he would have thought this season, just because of all of the injuries that the Reds have had. And, you know, he's not always consistently delivered, but he's been there in some big scenarios for them. And yeah, he's going to be etched in Reds opening day lore. And quite frankly, if you're etched in Reds opening day lore, you ain't going to get forgotten. Because, I mean, people still remember Javier Valentin and the walk-off home run for Ramon Hernandez. And then you had... and I just messed up my own example because I'm having trouble remembering the third baseman's name. Joe Randa. Nick Martini's going to be along with all those guys.
Well,
so
like you and Steve said, he's going to be a trivia question.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
And from the Cubs side, like who's somebody that's probably going to sneak up on Reds fans this weekend?
So I'm going to go with Nick's good friend, Patrick Wisdom.
Nice.
They're really good friends, and Wisdom, you know, I think we'll see him start Sunday against a lefty. He's a righty bat who provides power off the bench, and he'll be at first or DH Sunday for sure. But then in the bullpen, you know, the Reds have three lefties with Suter, Young, and what is it, Sam Maul?
Sam Maul. Like Darth Maul. Sam Maul.
And so I think, you know, when Michael Busch comes up against one of these lefties, I think Wisdom will hit for him. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. And yeah, if the weather is humid this weekend, you know, do we see both of these clubs' offense take a jump?
It could be interesting because I'm guessing FanDuel is going to have the over-unders pretty low based on the way that these two teams are hitting, but you never know. The weather could change that. But I tell you what, I'm looking forward to it. I'm not going to say predictions or anything like that because I know that you're probably going to say 2 out of 3. I'm probably going to say 2 out of 3, that kind of stuff. So we'll leave it to that. But you can check out Locked On Cubs and Locked On Reds for a series recap coming up Sunday night into Monday and things like that, because we will be with you every single day because we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.